Okay, we'll call to order the February 2nd, 2022 APCHA board meeting, regular meeting. Cindy, please take the roll.
Kelly?
Yes.
Francie?
Here.
Carson?
Here.
Skippy?
Present.
Rachel?
Here.
John?
Present.
Allison?
Present.
David? I know he was on.
He's connecting to audio.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
And John Ward?
And John, I did say John.
Okay.
Wonderful. Okay. So the first item on our agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment scheduled? If there's anyone online that would like to make public comment, please unmute yourself and state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Give me just a minute. All right. Not. I don't have Zoom up. Is there anybody?
Recording.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any public comment, and so we will move on to Executive Director's comments and a staff update.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Matthew Gillen, the Executive Director of APCHA. The one thing I just did want to comment on, which has been in the press a lot, is the situation at 16 Ajax, which is an APCHA deed property that is not owned by APCHA. APCHA and Alpine Bank met to discuss the issue and to work on a path forward. We will continue working with Alpine Bank on that. But I also want to make the point that, of course, responsibility for maintenance of the property rests with the homeowner, which is neither APCHA nor Alpine Bank. But we will continue to see what we can do, and we're very aware of the situation. And despite not having legal tools, because we're not the owner, we are trying to work and get a path forward on. Diane, did you have anything you'd like to mention?
I don't. Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks. That's it for Executive Director comments.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Okay, and then Cindy, you've got an update from you on signing up for notifications and available rental and sale units.
Right. First of all, I do want to remind everybody that we're at February 1st. We do require 2021 W-2s, profit and loss statement if you're self-employed, prior to bidding. It's not income tax returns, it's just your W-2s, 1099s, things like that that we do require, starting now. Just wanted to give you a heads up. We're not 100% sure, but we might have an Aspen Country Inn unit, one-bedroom unit come available. We'll know more on Friday. If you're interested in that, be sure to sign up for news updates, news releases. We will be adding a two-bedroom Category 5 unit at Burlingame on Friday afternoon. And right now, we do have a one-bedroom Category 2 at Annie Mitchell and a one-bedroom Category 4 at Lone Pine. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, so next item is the consent calendar, the minutes of the January 19th, 2022 regular meeting. Are there any additions, subtractions, changes to the minutes? And if not, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the January 19th regular meeting.
So I have a motion from Kelly, and I think Rachel was trying to.
I'll second, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Okay. roll
And it
call.
is a roll call vote.
Okay. Carson?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
John?
Not to my knowledge, but I could hope.
Yes.
Rachel?
Every day.
Yes.
And am I missing anybody? Who am I missing?
Allison.
Allison! I'm so sorry, Allison. Allison!
Yes.
Thank you. I knew I was missing somebody. Thank you very much.
Friends say these are the chakras.
These hybrid meetings are tough on you, Cindy.
I know.
Far angle, she's the side of the screen. She can't see.
Okay. So with that, the consent calendar
I'll go.
passes, and our next agenda item is the quarterly update from Andrew.
I'm so excited for these.
Hey, Andrew.
Hi, how are you guys?
We were excellent. Allison's hyped, and I share her stoke.
I'm assuming it's going to say something besides APCHA, though.
Yeah, you
We are APCHA, and we're done.
And
Oh,
we're
that's-
still APCHA.
That's what it stands for.
Excellent presentation.
Well, second.
It's not doing what it's supposed to.
I'm going to share my screen. You just have to let me share my screen. As Maddie's doing that, so kind of with today's quarterly meeting or quarterly reports, this isn't something APCHA had done previously, or at least on this basis. So I pulled together about 14 pages, and it's meant to be just a very broad overview of reports we can pull out of HomeTrack, and a lot of this data for today is meant to be transactional, and it's focused on what happened within Q4 of 2021. So it's only focused on something that happened within Q4 of 2021. Doesn't include anything from January. We're a little slow right now. Normally we'd like to do this right at the beginning of the next quarter. So Q1s, hopefully we'll do a lot quicker once we get into Q2. So let me share my screen. All right.
Let's hope it works. Yay.
Okay, so page 1 just has your contents. Again, we as an APCHA staff came up with this list of reports, but obviously we can make some adjustments on terms of what we'd like to see quarterly. What we were looking here really with this list of what are we going to be able to show from quarter to quarter. These aren't meant to be one-time reports. These are meant to be ones that we can see any changes between quarters as well. So that doesn't mean we can't pull these one-off reports for certain discussions, but this is meant to be focused on, again, transactional data. A little abstract here. This page just serves as a quick overview of being able to see what our numbers are of our inventory. We can see we have 3,124. There's a little asterisk here, and that is because our inventory is continuously being clarified. We are still working with ADU, EDU, CDU data. So as we clarify that information, those numbers can fluctuate here. Any questions on that one? I think this one's you guys have all seen these numbers before, so I don't want to spend too much time on this one. We'll jump right into the first report. So this is approved or denied qualifications or requalifications in Q4. Total between October 1st and December 31st of 2021, we had 469. Now that does not mean that these are the only applications that came into the system in Q4. This is with the filter of ones that have been approved or denied. Obviously, if there are ones that came in and they needed more information and our qualification specialist had to reach back out and they didn't provide that information, or they provided that information in Q1 of 2022, that would show up on the next set of quarterly reports. So this is specific to just Q4 approved and denied. Any questions on that one? Let you guys.
I guess the
take a
only
look at
question
it.
I might, just out of curiosity, out of the 469, do we know how many units that was for? 465?
It's a little hard to quantify that with sales ownership because people can put in sales applications without bidding.
Right.
That application's good for a year, so they might put it in October and not bid until
Sure.
September of the next year. So we could take out those 60 there. The rest are all per unit.
Okay.
Unless it was a seasonal case in which two separate applicants applied for the same unit.
Right.
So it's very possible in the seasonal side that those could be single units in there that are represented by multiple
Got
applications.
it. Okay. Thank you.
Allison, did you have a question?
Yeah, just if we are using this over time, like, do we have hopes for what that percentage is of who gets denied versus who qualifies? Is this a sign that we are doing a very good job of explaining what the qualifications are and what you need in your packet? I guess I don't know why we would want this data over time.
I can't answer that one in terms of, we don't have metrics of this is what we're looking for in terms of the number or the percentage of approved versus the percentage of denied. Matthew or Cindy, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on Allison's questions.
I think Kelly had.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe this is a thought on Allison's question is, I wonder if this could show churn in the system, or seasonal interest for folks. Or perhaps there's a mass end of year, supplementation before new taxes come in or something like that. There's a couple things that I might speculate.
Yeah, well, I think this is helpful too, just to know, how many people are applying.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
How many people are trying to get in? So, John, did you have a question, comment?
Well, Carson, I don't think this is this is just requalifications, right? So this is somebody living in one of these long-term rentals. They get kicked out because tax credit, maybe their income didn't meet the qualifications to that point. They made more money than the unit could allow. Long-term rental, would that have been the same thing? That's where I'm trying to figure out where they were denied.
So in this particular case,
this is purely a requalification of the total number of
It's not as
people
qualifications.
in those units.
it is both qualifications and requalifications. So for seasonal and sales, those are one time. Those can't be a requalification. So those are all brand new applications. In terms of the long-term and the tax credit rental numbers, it is a mixture of both qualification and requalification. For today's sake, I just mixed them all into one so that this report booklet wasn't 30 pages long.
And Diane's got her hand up.
Would the denials be, they didn't qualify? They just didn't meet the income category at the time, or what?
I didn't pull the metrics on exactly why they were denied here. That would be something we'd ask our qualifications. This was based on the application status of the particular case within HomeTrek.
And that's probably more likely it, John, is that they were over
It
income.
also just feels like it's weird that you have 465 people approved and 460 units to rent. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well,
It's 465 applications approved.
And we had 469 total apps. How many units were they applying for?
That was what Carson had asked earlier, and I don't have those numbers listed here. The last two rows are a little hard to quantify because we can't have single applicants in seasonal rentals applying for a single unit.
To me, that would be helpful information is what's the demand to the supply?
how many applicants per open unit?
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Exactly.
Well, that's-
Bedroom, maybe.
that's
Divide
hard.
by bedroom.
That's hard because we won't accept an application unless they've been offered a unit
Oh, for the rentals?
for the rentals. Yeah, so these are all units that were available and we accepted their application. If somebody's putting in a rental application, they have had to have been offered a unit,
But this,
So they go in the lottery.
not for
not for
rentals.
rental.
So how do we know who to offer it to then?
When for our units, they have to sign up, and then it's the longest work history, and we offer it that way. And then once we've offered it, then they fill out the application, and then they would be counted on this because they fill out the application.
But this has got private rentals and everything else in there as well. So Diane's had her hand up. Diane?
Sorry, just wanted to add a little more context to this. So this is the first set of quarterly reports, and the first page that you saw that Andrew provided is trying to make sure that you all know, right? So that in a year or so, when somebody says how many units are there, off the top of your head how many ownerships, how many rentals, et cetera, et cetera. The rest of these reports are all kind of moving data, and it's trying to show you activity. And I will tell you, having gone through this, You're definitely asking good questions. Some of this is really just like, hey, you should be aware of this stuff, right? Like, hey, this one tells you that we've got a lot of long-term, a lot of seasonal, as you've discussed. Sometimes people don't know that APCHA does qualifications for properties that are not managed by APCHA. And then the third piece is, I found myself as I was going through this that I would frequently have a question that got answered by the next report. So I just wanted to share that as a context for as you go through this, right? This is the first time you've seen data about activities that kind of are moving in a sense. Thank you.
No. Thanks, Diane. And then Rachel, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just really quickly, I think that this is great, and I think this is a good opportunity. Diane just stole the language I was going to use of, there needs to be a little more context around some of the examples. And let's keep in mind that this is a data or report that will be used by many others than us. And they need to know the context of these numbers. I think that's kind of more of what people here are asking. So we can broaden it a little bit by saying, even on this example, that there are X many units available for rent, and this was a time period in which this many applications were fully processed. And that was, in order to go forward. But I think just a little more context around what the terminologies mean when they're thrown into these slides and these graphics will help, again, for whether it's the press who's getting it, whether it's private citizens who are asking for the information, but to just be a little more crystal clear, what do statistics mean? Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
One quick question.
Diane, did you have a question, or is that an old hand?
Sorry, old hand. Thanks.
There we go. All right, Francie, you had a question.
Are seasonal rentals just 4 months or 6 months, or are they month to month?
We require them, especially for like Maroldt, to go under a lease from September through April.
Okay, great,
So,
thanks.
in order to make sure, and there are some employers that take advantage of that, and so that the units are available when their staff comes in.
And then from April to September, are they?
From April to after April, in May, we're getting both projects are getting prepared for the music associates. And then June, July, and August, the music students stay there on both properties.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Okay. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, because it goes to, like the tax credit rentals where it's kind of the probably income qualified, pretty strict, but on a are those I mean, what happens to those people that once they've kind of out-earned their income, much like we had the one lady that falsified her income, what happens to them?
Well,
do you have any idea? Do they qualify for another rental? Have we directed them to try to find another? Have we helped them find a rental within our system, or what happens?
John, one of the things is that we allow people to go 120% higher than what the maximum income is for that category.
On the requalification.
And on a requal, not an initial lead up.
Deal, it's pretty, like a LIHTC deal, those are pretty, you can't do that, can you?
Yes, you can. In fact, after you moved in, you could win the lottery and you could stay in that unit, which is an issue for us. But that's LIHTC for you. We do not allow that. But but they don't have any maximums after that. We have maximums after that because we have deed restrictions on an actual category deed restriction on both ACI and T2. So there is a maximum, and we use that number.
I thought on a LIHTC deal, you like down at the Roaring Fork Apartments that Rhonda did, that was a pretty big deal. They had to requalify every year, and if they earned too much, because you didn't want to put that tax credit at risk.
I couldn't tell you what tax credit they're under, but I know that at Aspen and Sandra checks with A.P.C.H.A all the time. They do not have a maximum income after the initial lease up.
but we still apply hours.
But we apply hours.
Cindy, so you're saying if you're renting a unit,
Uh-huh.
120% to stay in that, is that for 1 year or forever?
Once they go over that 120%, we let them know they have 1 year to either come back into compliance or find another place to live.
Got it. But as long as they're at 119, they could stay there for 10 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Robust discussion on the first slide.
Another 10 pages.
I'm taking notes. I'll wait till the end.
Continue, please.
All right, moving on to the next one. So this is talking about the number of new and renewed leases at APCHA managed properties in Q4. So these are either brand new leases or new lease terms that have started, or someone whose lease expired and then they re-upped or re-signed their lease, whether that was through a qualification process, if it had been 2 years from a long term, or a 1 year process with the tax credit side of things. One thing I will note here with regard to Maralt, Q4 is going to look low in terms of lease start dates because, as Cindy mentioned earlier, most of those leases start on September 1st, so that would be a Q3 portion of that report. But it's kind of showing our, I don't want to say turnover rate because this isn't turnover, but this is what our property managers are dealing with in terms of re-upping leases or starting brand new leases if it pertains to a move-in.
John.
Sorry, that's a remnant. I needed to drop that.
All
I
right.
apologize.
All right. Any other questions on this one? Otherwise, I will move on to the next page.
go.
All right. All right. Page 5 is number of move-outs in Q4. So this is only showing any of the APCHA managed units that had a move-out case. So you'll notice that Smuggler is not listed on here. It didn't have a physical move-out in Q4. Same thing with Maralt. It did not have a physical move-out. This is based on actual move-out dates, not a requested move-out date, but the actual move-out date that our property manager input into the system.
This is over 3,124 units, or
This is just APCHA managed, which is
APCHA
about
managed.
300.
What is that number of APCHA managed?
Gosh, I was going to say,
347 units, I think, something like that.
I will make a note to put that on the first page next time.
Yeah. This is where I'm really kind of saying that context makes such a difference. And, you know, I hate to get things to be repetitive, but even if behind Aspen Country Inn in parens, it would have the number of units, or Trustcott 1, the number of units. And then this slide and the slide before actually gives us a little closer to some of the turnover that happened in that last quarter, because the last one was renewal leases and these are total move-outs. So between the two, it would give you the turnover in that quarter in just those units. But I think, yeah, again, some level of context really needs to be around these slides as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next page. This is, again, on the property management side, or of at least APCHA managed units. These are all APCHA managed maintenance requests. Our maintenance team, that is part of the APCHA staff, only service APCHA managed units. And so what I did is these are any that were requested in Q4, and then kind of their breakdown across the board, and then breakdown by property as well. And just for some additional context, I think most of them are pretty clear on what they are, but a make-ready case is after a tenant has physically moved out, our maintenance team will go in, walk the unit, make a punch list, figure out anything they have to do, and then before it can be released to a new tenant or tenants, our maintenance team will have to fully go through and sign off of any of the issues they found or noted in their punch list for that make-ready. And again, this is not the number completed, but just the number of requests that came in. And this could be online or over the phone or walk-ins.
Make ready is paint. I mean, what kind of make ready is that? Paint?
It could be
clean?
paint, it could be carpet, it could be servicing appliances, it could be new blinds. It's really up to the standards of what the maintenance team, when they do that walkthrough and put on their punch list before it can be released.
Are we able to do all those issues ourselves? Like, that's a obvious majority of plumbing issues. Do we have a plumber, or is that our maintenance team goes in, looks at the problem, then might have to call someone in?
It really does depend on what the plumbing issue is. If it's something major, we have a plumber come in. If it's boiler work, we usually have a company that we deal with a lot come in and work on that as well. We do most of the painting of the units. If it needs new flooring, we do have somebody come in and do the flooring. So we do, there's quite a few jobs that we use outside vendors for.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Next page is, this is the number of sales listings, and then I organized it by bedroom and category. So these are ones that had a listing start date within October 1st and December 31st. So if it was listed on sometime in September and the lottery happened in October, that would not show up here. That's a different report with regard to lottery. This is just listing start dates within Q4. Tried to organize just so you could see kind of the breakdown of what was listed in Q4. One thing I know we get asked is, okay, how many units or how many types of categories per quarter, or how many category 5s did we list? It really can be dependent on the owner deciding to sell, whether they're moving, whether they want a new unit, whether there might have been a compliance issue associated. So there isn't necessarily a metric of, we expect to sell 5 category 5s within 2021. It really is dependent on whatever situation that particular owner is for the reason to sell. And same thing with bedrooms. It's all relying on the unit turnovers based on the unit owner.
Just a sort of nitpicky comment for the future. I know that there's not category 2 and 1 on there because none came up. But
Yes.
I think it would still be helpful to have a line with
Okay.
a 0. Just for the public, so they're like, well, what about this?
Got it.
So are these documents on our website?
They are
Well,
not as of today.
But they will be, right?
But they will be?
Yes. All right. Any additional questions on this one? Okay, I'll move on to the next page. This is number of bids by bedroom. Again, this does not mean that any of these units only had listing periods within their entire listing period happened within Q4. This just means a bid was placed during Q4 for this particular unit. And again, I organized it by bedroom. So for example, looking at 715 East Hyman, that means in Q4, it's a 1-bedroom, 59 bids came in during Q4 for that unit. There could be more bids during that for that particular unit that could have happened in Q3 if it was listed in Q3. Or for example, you'll see 215 Free Silver has 1 bid. It was listed on December 31st. We had 1 person bid on December 31st. The other, I think there were 29 total bids for that unit. The other 28 happened in Q1 of 2022. So this is just listing which bids happened in Q4.
On the last slide, there was 13 ownership units for sale.
So that was ones that had a listing start date in Q4.
But
These are
didn't
bid
necessarily have a
period.
lottery.
Correct.
So only 10 of those have gone to lottery. This is all of those.
These are any units that had a bid happen during Q4. They could have been listed in Q3, listed in Q4, but most of the lottery period happened in Q1 of 2022.
Got it.
We don't structure our listings by quarters, so this was one of the ones that was a little bit more challenging to play with in terms of context, because it's not broken down by quarter. Those listing periods can happen over quarters. The lotteries could be in a different quarter than when the listing was. The bid period could have closed in one quarter, but the actual lottery happens in the next one, but the sales close date happens 2 quarters down from there. So we just tried to organize by quarters and just, as something to start with for today.
Okay. For me, more interesting than the aggregate number of total bids for a category 1 would be average bids or not category 1, for 1-bedroom units would be average bids per 1-bedroom unit.
What do you mean? Like average that whole
Well,
column?
No, I mean like so in the one bedrooms there were what
126.
4. There were 4 different lotteries, so 126 bids. But you know you have whatever that is. 32 bids is the average number of bids, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And that could just be an inset, right? It could be like an orange part of that bar, but so you have some
Skippy,
sense.
I'm not sure that average means anything because there's such radically different
Yeah.
price categories. Benedict Commons is either a category 3 or a 2, and Lone Pine at the bottom of this list is a category 4. And so you're kind of trying to average people who potentially have an income up to, 150,000 for the category 4 one person versus those that are capped at 65 or something, not having the numbers in front of me. So I mean, it's good to know how many people would go for a 1-bedroom or studio, but with averaging them doesn't tell you much when they're of such radically different income categories.
Well, that average then. The average
I
then
think it's
might
worth
be.
noting a lot of people will buy either studios or 1-bedrooms when that's really inadequate for them, because then they can have the in-complex priority when a 2-bedroom comes up.
Yeah, I mean, most people will buy anything that's available. Certainly, that's my experience. Well, maybe the average, I mean, that's a good point, and the average perhaps should be by category. I'm just saying the total number of bids doesn't really tell me a lot. I mean, what's interesting to me is like, what is the demand versus the supply? And so the average does that. But you're right, maybe it makes a lot more sense to break that up by category and then have an average.
Well, and I mean, you've got a variety of different reasons why some units get more than others. I mean, location, price, condition, right? I mean, you could have just a slew
HOAs.
of reasons.
It's just still helpful for me, I guess, for multiple perspectives. Like, not at this table, but when Rachel and I are thinking about what categories at the lumberyard,
Right.
it's really helpful for me to know, what has the most need per category and per bedroom size. But then also, if we start thinking about right-sizing conversations, where are the areas where people are going to be most disappointed if there's some intervention, and where's there more room? Like, I just think it would be helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
59 is.
Andrew, is your next slide going to break this down by category as well?
Category is the next slide.
Wonderful. I think that will help.
Go ahead, please.
All right, moving on. Number of bids by category. So again, this is same context, that these are any bids that happened during Q4, but this is just organized by category.
But again, this is great. I don't want to say it's not, but someone could look at this and say, "Oh God, there's way more Category 4 people," and I say, "Well, there was a lot more Category 4 lotteries."
Exactly.
Right. I'd like to take credit for a number of those.
53 Forge, 15. 15 bids.
We've actually closed on that, by the way.
Have you?
The centennial problems don't
Seen
seem
some
to be
repairs
discouraging
going on.
people.
No, they don't.
The centennial problems don't seem to be discouraging people from bidding on centennial units.
When it's like a couch, expulsion, or centennial, you choose centennial.
I was going to say there's problems everywhere. You might as well own them.
Well, when your chairman of the HOA board says, "Don't worry about it," the city and the county are going to bail you out and make them all free market units.
No one's ever told me that.
I wonder if
Not
we should be
holding my
buying
breath.
those.
All right, Andrew, please proceed.
All right, next one is, this is number of bids that happen in Q4 by household size. So this one looks a little hard to read at first glance, so I just want to walk through it real quick. This top row is the number of adults, either 1 or 2. Next row is the number of dependents within that adult household makeup size. So this column here would be 1 adult, 0 dependents, 1 adult, 1 dependent, 1 adult, 2 dependents. So this is the bids that came in at that household size. So for 715 East Hyman, number 11, we had 46 bids in Q4 that were 1 adult, 0 dependents, 1 adult, 1 dependent, 2 adults, 0 dependents, and all the rest of the metrics are all at 0.
Got it.
What is this telling me?
A lot of single people.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is just based on availability. It doesn't mean that there's more single people who want housing in this community than families. there was just more, that was what was available. So I do think this is going to be interesting over time, but I wouldn't read too much into the demand from this report.
Correct. This is just the makeup of how it happened to fall for Q4. Q1 could look very different of 2022.
So real quick, one question I have on this. So if these are not for closed units.
These
for
were
closed
just
bids.
these were bids. For Q4, all of these lotteries have closed. All the bids periods are closed at this point. With this, yes, sorry, yes, these are all for the bidding period is completely closed. You
Okay.
can't place a bid on 155 Lone Pine A4
Perfect.
unless we were to go through all. In this case, what we can see, 39 bids and everyone passed.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to look at these once the bid period is over and the lottery's been held, so that we
Okay.
know total. Perfect. Thank you.
So if you look at the total number of bids versus the, was it 10 units that were available? 1, 2, 3, 4. We satisfied with sales about 5% of the demand of the units available that people want to bid on.
Go ahead.
All right, moving on to the next one. This is how many lotteries happened in Q4. So it doesn't mean that a unit closed and completed the sales transaction. These are just one that had lotteries. We can just see that in this case we had basically 3 each month. This one's pretty straightforward. It's just listing which units had lotteries in which month of Q4. Moving on to the next one, sorry. So this is the winner of those 9 lotteries that happened by bedroom. So we had, and by household size. So for our 1 bedrooms, we had 3 out of the 9 that were a single person household, no dependents. And then no single person won a 2, 3 bedroom, but 2 of them were studios. Within the 2 adults, we had 1 bedroom run by 2 adults, and 1 2-bedroom run by 2 adults as well. With our 1 lone 3-bedroom, it was a makeup of a 2 adults, 2 dependents. So these are the actual lotteries run in Q4, and then the household size based by bedroom. Okay. One thing I do want to note is this number can change, or this makeup can change depending on whether that current winner, this is the current winner as of when I pulled this report, if they were to either not qualify for mortgage or pass on the unit for whatever reason, and it went to the next person, that household size could look different. So this, just as an FYI, this is as of when I pulled this report of who the current winner was. And then this is winner by work history. One thing to note, these numbers for years of work experience are rounded either up or down to the nearest full number. So we can see between those 9 lotteries, it is quite the spread.
Wow.
These weren't all first-time winners, were they?
That one we do not have metrics on, but I can make a note if that's something we'd like to see in a future set of quarterly reports.
Maybe just something to all keep in mind, that when we see that someone wins after 32 years, that doesn't necessarily mean it's their first win, in even 7 years.
Correct. Yep. This is just based on their total work experience, and are they the current winner of one of those lotteries in Q4? All right, and I think I have one more page. And this last one is just listing units that closed or sold in Q4. So these have a brand new owner with them. This is not going to be the same number as the number of lotteries, because some of these might have had lotteries in Q2 or Q3 of 2021, and then they didn't close until Q4 of 2021 here as well. One thing to note as well is some of these units don't have to go through a lottery process based on their deed restriction. So more than likely in this specific report, you would more than likely see a higher number of units than units that had full lotteries here. And that's just based on their deed restriction.
Great. Skippy, did you have a question?
Cindy, I had a question. So these RO deed restrictions that don't have to go through the process, I know it's in their deed restriction, but when they sell and they get a new deed restriction, are we allowing them to maintain that condition?
We can't change the deed restriction unless they sell through us.
So forever, it's
It's unfortunate, but yeah.
you could buy it and then sell it again?
The city or the county
Could do that.
well, no, because they have the ability to sell to whomever they want to as long as they're qualified.
Okay. Thank you.
Rachel.
My frustration
Yeah,
is not
thank
with
you. I just wanted to say I think this is great work. You know, I don't know if we have the prior quarter's work or we're really just starting with this quarter, because it did seem to me that at least more mid-pandemic, we were having a lot more turnover of units, the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. And that's just of curiosity. But what it strikes me is that by tracking this and continuing to refine the data that we are tracking, and it really kind of cues off of Allison's question, I thought was an excellent question, of the trends, and how do we find trends and patterns in this, you know, because price is going to make a difference in terms of how many applications are for the units. It doesn't really determine how many people need that kind of unit, but if it's at the top of a category 4 or it's a category 5, you might find less people able to afford it, and whether they need it or not. And the other is the history, and it really, that's a great question. Are they lottery winners from before? Because someone who has obtained a unit has probably had a better chance to develop some equity and develop their financial position to a state to be able to try for another unit or a newer unit or more expensive unit, even within the same category. So I'm not saying there's anything definitive here, but I think that we and future APCHA boards can really start to look at this for, you know, what is the trend? What is the pattern of buying? Do people avoid one project so much because it has so low bids because it's got issues? Does everybody just automatically bid for the newest one even though they already own a unit? You know, but I think we can see some real patterns coming out of this, and I just want to compliment you on the work of the full APCHA staff for developing this. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that
very
was my last
helpful.
page. Thank you. Oh, sorry, did you want me to reshare?
No, I don't need to see that.
Okay.
I just wanted to, a couple things just for next quarter that I think would be interesting. I'd love to see, as far as like the overall things like move-outs, how many of those, if any, come from units that we know have unused bedrooms, and age of people as well. We hear kind of conflicting opinions about movement, so those will both be helpful. As I mentioned, kind of average number of bids by unit type, so category and bedroom size would be helpful. And then I'd love to understand what you were talking about, Kelly, just kind of churn versus stay. If we've got, 435 total things, how many of those are people who are requalifying and staying in, and how many of those are people that are moving units? And for those that are moving, how many are moving into the system versus out, just to have some sense there. I think that would all be really helpful for me. And then other than that, I just want to say thank you. Information is power. And when the information is public, it's really power for the community. And in the last 3 months, the conversations that I've got to have in community groups that are interested in housing have been so much better informed, and so much more coalesced around a set of facts that has been empowered by this work. So it's just really awesome. Thank you for being so on it.
And Allison, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. I know this was asked, will this be on our website, but I just want to hit that a little harder, get a more specific answer as to where this can be found, or, so,
Sure, so this will live on the APCHA.org under the Documents section, and then we'll create a new folder with regard to quarterly reports.
okay. For next time, it's hard for me, at least, to get this information in real time, so it would be wonderful if any of that could be provided in the packet, so we don't kind of all pounce on you on the first slide and know what's coming or have a better explanation. I'm also unclear the way it was presented today. You gave the list of kind of the data points that we were going to see this quarter. Are we seeing the same data points each quarter, or next quarter are you coming to us with different fascinating data? And I echo everyone else that I love these presentations and I want as much data as possible, but did you kind of choose these metrics for this quarter, but next quarter we'll see a little bit more about the kind of categories and demand and who's bidding and who's new and who's leaving? You know, there's so much data we could get. I didn't know if each quarter is going to start giving us trends or going to cover different questions.
I think the idea was to, as Rachel said, was to follow the trend, so it would be the same data set. We were trying to curate a data set that was useful, but also grabbable, so Andrew wasn't spending all his time doing it. So, you know, he's doing this quarterly, so we were trying to come up with a set that was telling a story, illustrating it, but also would be showing good trends across the years. That was the idea. So that's what we're going with. We're going to stick with this. You know, if we want to refine it a little bit, that's great. But we really would like to have a set of data points that we follow throughout the year, rather than doing ad hoc ones every quarter.
Certainly. Okay, I'll have probably little notes when I get a chance to look at that. If that could be emailed to us, your presentation, that'd be helpful. But that's along the lines of what other people have said, that we put, you know, how many bids, how many Cat 3s there were total, in little parentheses in the different columns. On page 13, I don't know that you necessarily have to pull this up for everyone, but there was 2 people who had worked here 7 years who bid, right?
Correct.
So even something like that, like we don't need 7 listed twice. I think it would be 7 and then 2 in the next column.
Correct. Sorry, my previous one, and I should have caught that. I had it broken down to 2 decimal points in before it was rounded. So that's on me. Thank you.
Yeah, I really look forward
one was
to
like
them.
6.5, and the other one was like 7.3.
Oh, the inner sanctum.
I do look forward to watching some of those data points grow each quarter. I do wonder if there's a couple of data sets we can grab that will be a little more meaningful, being that these are so much based on what was offered. And so, as you said, that's totally up to everyone's individual life circumstances, and maybe not teaching us quite what is needed or where exactly the demand is. So I don't have anything off the top of my head to help with that. The rental information, I think, is really helpful, that we manage, though that information, leases coming and going. I believe that if in 3 months there was 24 releases, it seems like that doesn't take up too much of our time. That seems like a good pace, but I know, like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe the lease takes up a ton of time to re-up a lease, but things like that and maintenance do help inform us for things that we actually have say over, you know, who we're hiring and where our staff is spending time. So I think that rental information is really helpful for the board to see, and I hope I'm not extrapolating incorrectly that it looks manageable in that quarter. That's my notes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, we will move on to the update on the communications plan and strategy from Matthew.
Great. So I'm just going to piggyback off what Skippy was saying. Information is power. And so the communications plan is really about how APCHA both pushes out information and then how we interact with the public. So, you know, when I was being hired for this job, part of the role was going to be communications and being the public face of APCHA. And I want to make sure that we're doing that in a way that fits the 22nd year of the 21st century, when right now, most of the people we're interacting with are calling us on the telephone, which was invented in the 19th century. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to leverage some of these tools that we have, some social media, to both push out our information, and I want to make sure that we can interact with the public, with the community in the easiest way possible, because right now people talk to us, but they are the people who have the time, the energy, and the motivation to actually pick up the phone, and they usually get Cindy on the line, but we want to make that easier for people to present questions, to get at our products better, and so that's what that's one of the main things we're trying to do with the communications plan. Maddie? So, whoops. Yeah, and but goal 2 there. Yes, sorry, I was following it on myself rather than what everyone else was seeing, so that wasn't helpful. So yeah, so we have the immediate community who we're trying to talk to. Let's go one more. Let's go to the next one there. Thanks, Maddie. Sorry. So, obviously the people we most want to talk to in the bullseye are the people, the current and potential clients. So people who want to rent through APCHA, owners, people who are trying to get lucky and use the lottery, and just in general people seeking housing. That's the immediate goal there. But then also within the broader Pitkin County community, we want to, and this goes back to the earlier goal, we want to make sure people understand what APCHA is trying to do. That's of course citizens and residents, decision makers. That's both people like you guys and on the city council and in the county, but also I'd like to say decision makers in as much as people who cultivate public perception and important people within the community who are influencers, if you want to put it like that. And of course we have a lot of partner organizations who we work with, and we want to develop and deepen those relationships, and that's part of that's another group we'd like to reach out to. Maddie, you take the next one? There. So here are some of the key messages we're trying to get across, and that's making sure people understand the options we provide. And also I think this one in the middle is extremely important, because that really stresses, and we really want to make clear that APCHA is really part of the community, and both as an organization and with our tenants and our clients and our owners, they are really a fundamental bedrock part of the Pitkin County community. And we want to remind them of that and make sure people understand and they appreciate what APCHA is, both in terms of organization and in terms of an idea. It's an idea that people in this housing community are really an important part of the community, and we should recognize that and treasure it. And then also HomeTrek, we want to make sure people are using HomeTrek properly, that we've invested a lot of money into HomeTrek, and I want to show the community and the citizens how we're using that data. For example, Andrew's presentation today, but that is also going to be changing on the user interface side. We currently are still taking some paper applications, and we are going to be moving towards getting everything on HomeTrek, the whole application process. So that'll be another message we'll be going through, using the data and also educating our clients on how best to use HomeTrek to apply and to use it that way. Thanks, Manny. You can do the next one. So these are some of the strategies we're going to be using overall. Storytelling, which really means social media posts. We'll be doing 3 or so a week, usually through Facebook. And I was going to save this for later on, but our Facebook page is live. We have a small number of people who found us already. We went live on Monday. There's been a couple previous APCHA Facebook pages over the years, but this is a brand new one, and it looks really nice. We have posts going about 3 times a week. So that'll be telling the story of APCHA through social media, we've Facebook and probably Twitter as well. And I do apologize to our Gen Z tenants and clients. We're probably not going to be doing TikTok. Sorry about that.
I heard you dance well.
We're not doing TikTok. We're keeping it old school. And then of course, this final one, current and future clients. We want to make sure people can get at APCHA services properly. They understand it. So Maddie, go to the next one. Yeah, so as I said, so here we go, tactics and tools, Facebook and Twitter. So we're going to be doing, I'm trying to build the muscle memory here and not, because we're not hiring anybody else to do this. So what I'm trying to keep it consistent. So we're doing kind of a little and often approach. We will be posting 3 times a week or so, and working with our communications partners. We've got those scheduled throughout February. So consistency rather than big events. So we'll be posting up there. And then this is this top right hand corner. This is what I'm most excited about. We're going to be using Facebook probably once a month, and we're going to be doing Facebook live sessions and chats to give people another opportunity to come in and ask questions. We'll be usually have a theme, so we'll be doing the lottery process, or Cindy will be doing housing 101, and I also want to make sure we do some of those in Spanish as well to give some of our Spanish-speaking residents a chance to ask questions. But that's kind of the most important part for me, is giving people an opportunity to ask questions in a more accessible way. Like I said, we'll be doing it probably once a month. If I just go back to Facebook right now, the Facebook is, we're not going to have comments on Facebook. We're just, because that we won't have the resources to monitor and respond appropriately to comments. So that is pushing it out. But then we'll be using sessions once a month to chat to people and give them another way to ask questions and receive information from APCHA. And then down in the bottom right hand corner, we are also ready to do quarterly newsletters, which will be a bit more in depth. We hope to have one of those out in March, and that'll be for example, in this one, it'll be I'll do a little who is Matthew Gillen little letter from me. It'll be very boring, and then we'll do and then we'll also do preparing your property for the spring. These are the kind of things we could look with, and then we might do an article from Cindy on some of the things she's seen. So there's also room for interesting things there. And then this is probably the bottom left-hand corner is probably a bit more in the future, because like I said, we don't have new resources for this, but we'll be looking at materials we can leave behind, and also reaching out more to local media. Cindy next. Maddie. So this is kind of what we're doing so far. We've already in quarter Q1 of 2022. Social media is up. We're going to be getting a quarterly newspaper out, newsletter, probably in mid-March, and we'll be moving on from them. And then internally, we'll be working on the home track and how we move to a purely home track based receiving of applications, but we need to do some work on that. But once we've made that decision on how we're going to do that, we will make sure everybody in the community knows about it, and we'll be reaching out to everybody about that. And then in the second quarter, we'll be doing other Facebook Live sessions. And again, working on building up social media subscribers, which is it's very small right now, because like I said, it's just the people who found us in the past week. So I'm expecting after the board meeting today, that'll increase a lot. And then we'll be moving those strategies throughout Q3 and Q4.
Can you say the name of the Facebook account so
Yeah.
people can start finding it?
It's Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority, and it has the logo. Let's see. Let me pull it up on mine.
Dumb question, but it's
There
actually not.
are no dumb questions.
It's actually not a dumb question. If you go on Facebook and just search APCHA, does
Yeah.
it come up? 'Cause
No, I think you should type in the whole thing.
I don't know if there's any way to change that, but I think
Yeah.
that may be a barrier for some.
And-
It will?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, as more people get in there.
Okay.
Rachel?
And I don't want to interrupt if there was more to the presentation. I just wasn't sure as dialogue was starting. But, you know, I really agree with where you're going. I'm glad you're approaching communications as one of the real needs for this agency, this office. But I also want to kind of speak a little for the old school at one level. And I've been very concerned that our outreach to Spanish language speaking population and workforce is really not really good. And, you know, Matthew, this was way before your time, and I understand why things change, but we literally used to advertise in the Aspen Daily News with both an English language and a Spanish language right underneath it. And then we stopped advertising in the papers because of the expense. I understand that, and we do most of it all online. But I'm not sure that we haven't really left some people behind who are not especially internet users. And a small example is I had a citizen call and help them out last week who couldn't apply for their business license online because that's just not how they'd ever done business before. And so the finance department took care of them, and they went inside and they learned how to apply online. But what I wanted to point out particularly is that, you know, the Daily News is now doing a Spanish language insert, I think at least once a week. And I believe the Sopra Sun out of the Carbondale area does as well.
So it's the Glenwood
And
newspaper.
I think that would be a place where some newspaper ads in Spanish language of how to get to the website in Spanish and how to fill in an application online in Spanish, or whether we work to try to find a navigator. But it really made me think back even to our data summary that we just heard, which was great. But is there any reason to or a reason not to ask for ethnicity of people who are successfully requalifying or successfully winning lotteries? Because I'm just not sure we're seeing the. I'm not sure we're seeing the result in our occupancies and our tenants and in our new owners that roughly parallels the demographic makeup of our workforce. And I'm just not sure that there aren't perhaps some special interest groups that we need to reach out to a little more directly and deliberately. And I'll just leave that comment at that. So, thank you.
John, did you have a question?
Yeah, and I think I apologize for my phone ringing if I was off mute. I'm sitting in this meeting, and I think Bob Bowden must have seen this on TV or something, because he called me and he's all fired up about housing and he's got all sorts of ideas. But I wanted to know where we
Tell
were.
them to call us.
What is Affordable Housing 101 session?
That is just literally people don't know what affordable housing is. Because, you know, I think the word.
So I think, and this might go to Rachel a little bit, but we created a booklet for this at one point,
Yeah.
but there should be home ownership, because I know there's certain loan entities that require kind of a home ownership class before you actually can qualify to get a loan through them. It might be FHA or somebody else, but that's really, I think, the benefit, and I thought it was a good class that we were working on, is my guys were teaching, and we could teach it in Spanish. I've got people that could do that. But I think that's as important as anything else.
Look,
teaching new homeowners, and even some of the people that we have, what are kind of the requirements of homeownership, because it goes beyond your mortgage payment, your P&I payment every month. So I think that's one thing that we should try to re-implement. So.
Try to do something else. I listen, but don't listen to this.
Like our fireplace got cleaned up. What did they say?
That creosote was.
Hi, Laura.
I was trying to listen.
No, thanks, John. Those are great ideas. Like I said, we're trying to start small, but then we can build it out. Sorry, Allison.
We do have that mandate now that along with your bid packet, you have to have that homeownership education class. So not that you can't double that up, but
Yeah.
I think that might have been where that got scooted to.
And I know before COVID, we APCHA did in-person sessions, which Cindy led. But we're trying to work with what we have and reach out to more people. But there will always be more people to work with. And I definitely do want to reach out more to the Spanish-speaking community, and we're very committed to that, and I look for more ways to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, having, to John's point, if we could, so much of this, the conversations that I have with people who, write letters to the editor and they're fired up, and then you get on the phone with them and you talk through everything that's going on. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Right. I think the better a job that we could do, maybe putting some of that out there so we could refer people to it, or if we're working on something and we want to put together something on the website. I don't know. Just a thought.
It goes, Carson, APCHA, Miss Melius's article in the paper on Sunday about Ajax. This is as much homeownership 101 or anything. We're kind of stuck at the whim of a lender that doesn't give a crap, and we're stuck at the whim of a homeowner that's no longer existent. So, and APCHA our hands are tied. We'd love to be able to sell that unit, a good unit to the buyers that won the lottery, but we're stuck. We're kind of screwed, and there's not much to do about it. But that goes to this same thing: homeownership, taking care of it, educating people on, who has responsibilities in certain actions. So,
Skibby.
Yeah, I had a few thoughts, but John, I think you're right. Like if we had the seller for standards for sellers program in place, 20 years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation, and drawing that nexus for the community is important. Just a few things. One, this is just great, right? Like, to see the intention, the schedule, the clear plan makes me feel awesome, right? Like we're really sort of stepping into that place that we've talked about for a couple of years, and to see it in this fashion, I think makes me feel really good going out into the community, which is awesome. Carson, when you're talking about your conversations, I have a lot of the same conversations. And part of it, in my view, is information, but the other part of it is trusted source, right? Like they're talking to you, they have some relationship to you, they know you. It's different than when you read it in the newspaper or you kind of scan it on Facebook or something. And so,
in my conversations, people make there's a lot of statements that are just like 180 degrees from the truth, like just blatantly wrong.
Yeah.
Not so much the source, just a complete misunderstanding.
Well, what I mean to say is if they have that misunderstanding and read something from an anonymous source, it may not correct that misunderstanding.
True.
But when they're talking to you and you correct it, they're like, oh, because they trust you.
Right.
You're the trusted source. So that's all to say that I think, our opportunity in the language is to really lean into the ethos of, which are now in our kind of founding documents of compassion, community, and inclusion, and just really make everything that we put out there feel that way. As ethereal as that may seem, over time, what we're really looking to do is rebuild trust. And so I loved your three initial messages, and maybe a way to think about those in more of that ethos is, we're caretakers of the community, that community characters live in APCHA, and that we're stepping into the modern age, right? And we're like bringing the community with us along in that process. So I just thought that may be helpful. And then the last thought I had, the boxes of stuff to do is great. I actually, one back. I actually totally agree with Rachel, but actually on the other side. It's great that we're getting on social media. That's wonderful. We're also doing it when people are starting to drop off social media. And it's going to be a long tail. Like, it's going to be a long time before people are off. But what we're going to see over time is that the people that remain are kind of the least reachable in some way. And so I think whether you're not internet savvy or you're younger and sick of the toxicity, having something community-based and in person is going to be really valuable. And so an idea for adding maybe a fifth box that won't add much to staff, when we had our little sub-working group, Kelly, we were kind of talking about to go out to nodes in the community and just kind of have some like listening sessions. And maybe there's an opportunity for a once a quarter or a once every month listening session where, you know, we go to the big area, Centennial, but we send the invite to kind of all the AH in that region. And, you know, we try to get half the board there. And our job is really just to kind of like listen and hear, and then at the end share what online resources are.
Too many people.
So anyways, I don't want to commit anyone to anything, but I think having that kind of personal board-led community touch could be a really nice complement to this.
Well, like I said, we're trying to, start with something we can chew on, get it going, and then we can build up from there. So yeah, that's great. You're absolutely right. Love to do it. Love to have the ideas, and yeah.
Okay. Well, just being mindful of the time, I see Allison and Rachel both have a couple of comments. If you would just maybe a brief comment, and then we'll move on.
3 minutes or less.
Matthew, are you done with your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to jump in to what Skippy was saying. I do have a couple comments that I will try and make brief, though I do think communication and transparency is the only way we're going to achieve everything else in connecting with the community. So I think this is pretty important. As you heard both Carson and Skippy say, people come to the APCHA board to talk about APCHA all the time, and I feel like we are left out of this plan. And so Skippy's idea of putting us in the public is one thing. If the board is not the right person to talk to, I think making that clear as well. But as APCHA is trying to make a good reputation and connect with the community, just know that the people who are on the board, who are part of the community, are who are communicating, I think, boots on the ground the most and dispelling some of these things. And so it seems a little odd that I don't know where we fit into this, or if you want us fitting in this at all. Can you go back to those key messages? I do not resonate at all with this first one. I don't know exactly what you mean by APCHA serves Pitkin County workforce with many housing options. It sounds like maybe we don't have time to discuss this today, but I think if you're going to gain trust, the first thing you need to say better relate to the person who you're speaking to, and you're speaking to people who feel like they have absolutely no housing options. And we just saw the housing options right now are 3 a month, probably not in your category. So what do we mean when we say we have that? I want to work, I don't know if the board gets to work on the key messaging at all, but I just want to make sure that the first thing you say isn't completely tone deaf. Then I do know that running the social takes some staff time. Do you have one specific staff person? Are you guys all kind of sharing that load?
We'll be sharing it. Maddie's going to be the tip of the spear, but we'll all be sharing on it.
Good. Go get it, Maddie. So yeah, I think getting that name out along with the fact that we have it is important. So anywhere you're saying find us on Facebook, make sure we're saying where exactly you're finding that. And then the messaging and seeing where you can fit the board in to any of the kind of communications.
Yeah, we like give us a chance. We'd love to have you guys help us out. Yes, so absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. Those are great thoughts, and I was really looking forward to yours because of your media experience. And I really endorse that. And, you know, it's really more accurate to say that APCHA manages the current inventory. You know, and that's not exciting. But APCHA does not have a development department, and it really doesn't have the money and resources to develop. So APCHA's not doing that. It's a management entity, and that's a little more accurate. And I think that that's appropriate. We always have people applying for the board who think they're going to start designing units and picking out land places and things, and they're not. And they're dealing with all the yucky stuff. And so I think clarifying that might help put a little more pressure on both the city and the county to produce more housing. The second is that what she's saying about us being the spokespeople, I think that what we're talking, at least for me, is that the element of having some collateral material that is accurate, it's all on the same page, and I mean, we're all on the same page because we all have the same material. It's what's being presented, it's maybe what's in a Facebook post, but we have it in hand as well. So, you know, it's not 5 different explanations of the exact same thing coming from 5 different board members. I think that makes it helpful. And that's important in the messaging. And then the final thing I just kind of have to get into here a little bit is that at least with some of the complaints and when there's discussion about APCHA and housing, some people have very, very different opinions about what the housing program was started for and what it is supposed to accomplish now or in the future. And, you know, we see the articles of, hey, make them all rental only, and that way when somebody can't lift 60 pounds a day every day, they can be out of here, you know, or let's tell them that they have to move out upon the 1 year of retirement. And people have a very different attitude that the people in APCHA are here just to serve the wealthy and the people with the $5 million homes. And if they're not able to do that day in and day out, they're a drag on this community. And that attitude has become very pervasive. And I'd like to just say, as a city council person, and who's been true to this constituency for a long time, I view APCHA's work as in the Aspen Area Community Plan, and I think that that is the messaging that this board and this agency needs to take out. It's a statement on what housing's purpose is in the community and for the community and for a sustainable community that both the city and the county had signed off on and our agreement on and were developed by our community. So I think I need to feel that we are really reinforcing the message of what APCHA is and that we're not a company town's created entity to supply a good supply of $15 an hour workers at any cost. And I think that's where the pressure, I think, is building up as we're going to lose what. And the last thing is there's an article I read recently, and they used the term naturally occurring affordable housing and said that the state of Colorado had lost hundreds of thousands of naturally occurring affordable housing. And that's what's happened to the Roaring Fork Valley outside of the APCHA program. And that's going to put more pressure on APCHA program to turn from its original roots of sustaining a real community in Aspen to simply becoming a workforce provider. And I'm very nervous about that pressure. Thank you.
Rachel, I think you need to reframe affordable to, this valley's never had much affordable, it's been attainable.
It may be attainable. I saw a really nice unit advertised down in Glenwood Springs for 740 square foot, old town, probably 30 or 40-year-old place for $540,000. And as someone who's becoming a senior, I thought a lot about moving out and right-sizing, but I just can't close the nut on that one. Thank you.
Quick, Diane, did you have a quick follow-up, and then Kelly's got a...
I do. Super quick follow-up. One is that, there's 2 things. One is that thank you for all of that input, and thanks to Matthew, right? I had this on our work plan last year, never got it done. At one point there was a committee trying to do it, and it's starting, and the input's great. And, you know, Matthew's bilingual. He's lived in...
Wait.
Try?
Multi-cultural.
Sorry, go ahead.
Right, these are important things, and I just wanted to reiterate be patient, right? There's a lot going on at APCHA right now, and the fact that Matthew got this far in this short period of time is awesome. Second thing on the communication front, I did want to mention is that I forgot to mention, I should have asked Matthew to cover it because he's on the team. We are going to council on February 8th with the Affordable Housing Strategic Plan. It is the output of the December City Council retreat on affordable housing. And it does have a few APCHA items in there in that plan, but I want to let you know about it. The report will come out on Friday as part of the City Council packet. And there are many things in there that City Council is going to change. So it's kind of, we're bringing the first draft to City Council on the 8th. So you may want to put it on your calendar. It could be an interesting discussion, and I'll make sure that Matthew sends it all. I'll ask him to send it all to you on Friday as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I would welcome any board, I'm sure Rachel as well, we would welcome any board feedback prior to that meeting, if you guys have it.
Okay, and Kelly?
Yeah, I guess would suggest that with any messaging, just do a check-in with the strategic plan, because I feel like some of this wording has already been hammered out by this board and agreed to and voted on and adopted, so that might just be an easy, clean place to start.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. I mean, the messaging obviously very important to everything else that we do. And so with that, we will move on to Cindy's going to give us an update on the criteria for entering into a new deed restriction.
The board talked about this at I brought it forward at the last meeting and had a lot more criteria in here. Staff talked about it, and we felt that let's make it a little bit easier for people who really want to keep up their place, really want to do additional stuff on their unit. So we have, I put in there just two basic criterias for that, where an owner has to have owned their place for at least 10 years, and they have to be in good standing with their HOA. And then at that point in time, they can ask us if they can go under we can look at what they've already done. We can look at their current deed restriction, and then if they want to go under another deed restriction, the most updated one, we will work with them on doing that.
Great. Thank you. John, did you have a question?
I did, because don't we have units that a buyer purchased where the previous owner had maxed out their capital improvement, or whatever you want to call it, budget, and even as a buyer where you have a certain limit that you can kind of do to your unit to get the benefit of? Aren't there units out there that, I'm thinking of one in particular too that works for me, that I thought his deed restriction would have been maxed out where he could do nothing to his unit and then get any benefit from that?
Well, right now, any category unit that goes through us on any resale, a new deed restriction is already put on it, and they start out with brand new 10% capital improvements. If it does not have to be sold through us, the North 40 is one of them. It has a 10% capital improvements from the original purchase price. So if the first owner used all of them up, any owners after that, they can do whatever they want to the unit, but they can't get credit for it unless they opt to go under a new deed restriction. That
Well,
means
where I'm kind of going with that is, like, if you put a 10-year, you have to have owned that property for 10 years, why would we just not go, hey, if your unit, if you've owned the property and you purchased it where it was the cap was maxed, you didn't purchase it, I'm thinking it is a North 40 unit, but if you were willing to, hey, I got some work I want to do this unit, I want to spend some money to update, upgrade, whatever, why would we put a 10-year, a minimum of 10-year ownership on that?
And honestly, I'm fine with readdressing this And one of the reasons is to make sure that somebody has already taken advantage of their capital improvements. But we could put in there, owner has owned the property for at least 10 years or has maxed out the capital improvements, or they are not allowed any. Or they've all been used up. Either they've maxed it
Well,
out or they've all been used up.
Not allowed, is, right? Not allowed. And the goal is to put a new deed restriction in place that allows people to maintain, take care of, update, upgrade, whatever you want to call it, their unit.
I think the thought process behind the time frame is so that somebody couldn't just do a new deed restriction every year and get a new 10%, right?
Right, right.
But this is a one-time offer, right?
Well, I would say right now, who
Yeah,
knows,
well,
10 years
I mean-
down the line, we might want to go ahead and allow
I
somebody
don't
to
know
do
that
it.
I mean, I like the 10-year requirement, and I don't think it needs to be a one-time deal, because as Rachel has discussed many times, if somebody lives in a unit for 30 years and they want to put, every 10 years, they want to put more money, why would we not allow that? So we get lots of comments here. Before we go to Rachel, always check in with your attorney when he has his hand up.
Just real quick, don't forget that the as I recall, the only reason for a limitation on capital improvements is to make sure that the units remain affordable, and that they aren't made unaffordable by amenities and other things that may not be necessary that the current owners want to have to improve their quality of life. So it's not intended as a punishment, but it's intended as a way to make sure that prices don't go out of control.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, we'll go to Rachel and then Kelly.
Thank you. I am totally in favor of us moving this forward. I think it'd be valuable and I've used the term narrative before, but let me try to use a different word, mechanics, that we should talk a little more about the mechanics, because I thought this was just for folks who had a 10% that was non-renewing. And right now, you can use the 10% and then it would depreciate down over 10% to zero. And this is only in some deed restrictions, but then it would renew and you could use another 10% that would depreciate down. So that I think is an important component of this. Is I thought we were looking for people who had deed restrictions that were going to expire to try to entice them to get into a new deed restriction. That if the 10% was always used up and there's only one 10% to begin with, or it was non-renewing, that would be qualifying. But if somebody's lived there 10 years and they've used their 10%, most of that stuff is probably depreciated or begun to depreciate. And if it is the right deed restriction now, they would be able to redo it again. And so I'm wondering, why would those be offered this? And I don't think we've answered questions about how many times. And that is something that should be in the mechanics. Is it once every 10 years somebody could, or can you do it every 3 years? And so we need to kind of set those things out from the very beginning. And I know we're looking very carefully at what things will qualify for this that are not just inflating the price, as Tom was saying, to separate aesthetic improvements from, if I want to replace the kitchen cabinets and it's $5,000, but the old cabinets were totally functional and there's no new capacity added, is that a legitimate $5,000 capital improvement that would be permanently added to the house? And, the definition of how their new 10% does depreciate down, I think it's really important. So again, I'm all in favor of this. I'm not trying to hold anything up, but I have gotten a little confused over, is it being offered to every single free market, affordable home we have that is a for sale unit? Or are we targeting this towards older units? Is this for a unit that just came online 5 years ago? And what does it do to the prices, as Tom was reminding us? Thank you.
Kelly?
Okay, I wasn't sure if Steph wanted to answer. I guess, well, this might be premature in our list of priorities, but I still continue to think that some of this should be tied with like financial health of HOAs. You know, because I just sort of am troubled with people who are, maybe have an opportunity to put money directly into their unit when their HOA is like gonna face a major special assessment, you know, in a year or so. So I don't know how to balance that, or if this is something like when we kind of tackle evaluating financial health of HOAs, could come back and retie this to that.
And I would agree that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because I know that there are people in HOAs who want to do the right thing, and then the majority of them don't want their HOA dues increased. So things are not getting done. And so some of the owners are being penalized for the balance of the owners who don't want to pay higher dues, so they're not getting the infrastructure and stuff done. So, I mean, I would agree, it would be nice to say if you need to really work on getting your HOA all lined up with a good capital reserve budget and everything like that. It's hard when you still have owners out there who fight that. And I know of a couple, I've had some owners call and say, I just can't get our HOA to do anything. So, but it would make sense on that. But I think once and this isn't immediate because we're already tackling something else, but I think when we finally do decide to tackle the capital reserve issue, I think that's something that we need to talk about as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is one where, right, I think there's certainly points. I think this is one where if we've got residents that are looking to spend their own time and money to make improvements to APCHA housing, I think we should make it easier versus more difficult. So I'm supportive of this, and I would say move it forward. I don't know if we're not voting on this, right?
Right.
I have a really quick question. What is the cap on the deed restriction increase?
For capital improvements?
Well, you said
Go
that
up
they get
to
a new deed
category.
restriction. What's the cap on that? Is it the amount? Is it the 10%?
Well, what it would be is, if somebody goes under a new deed restriction, what we do is we would take their maximum sales price as of that date that they go under a new deed restriction, and they would get a 10% of that price to work with additional capital improvements.
So they were restricted to 10% capital improvements, and then they get that applied directly to their new appraised
If they've already
value.
done capital improvements, how we do it is we take the purchase price that somebody bought it for, we take their appreciation, and then we add the capital improvements to that. Now, when somebody sells, that price gets changed along with the capital improvements that they did, and so the new buyer comes out with that price that has those capital improvements that the previous buyer did as part of that maximum sales price. This is what would happen with this. It would be like they're a new owner, in a sense, and they're starting out with a new purchase price, new purchase date. As of that date, they enter in the deed restriction and the new 10% capital improvements.
And so
that
we
depreciate down.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna, so we do consider the depreciation of the improvement if it was made like 10 years ago, or we don't?
Right,
We do.
right. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you so much, Cindy.
And I agree that it does increase the price of the unit, but you're also getting upgraded water heaters or more energy efficient water heaters. You're also getting maybe a little bit different layout of a kitchen that's more doable, updated appliances possibly. So you're giving an incentive, I'm hoping, for people to really take better care of their units, so that when they do go to sell, the next buyer's getting a decent unit, and that's
Yeah.
gonna last for a little bit, instead of the hot water heater going out the next day.
And, I mean, just a reminder, I mean, as, on the whole, from an average standpoint, when we looked at the affordability standard, I mean, the average unit in the APCHA system from a, housing income versus gross income standpoint is well below what, the level that most lenders would say is viable for a tenant. I mean, in general, I think we were kind of kicking around, is it 25%, is it 30%? And I think in the reviews, I mean, this is off the top of my head, I want to say we were in the 15 to 20% range on the average property. So I think there's some room there to increase values. Allison,
I'm in need of some clarification here. On October 20th, we added some language to our regulations that you can do capital improvements outside of the 10% cap. And then we have a list A through F of what those improvements are. They're all pretty green efficiency type improvements. Leaks, water heaters, roofs, every 10 years on Energy Star appliances. So we do already have an option someone would not have to update their deed restriction and would be able to go up and above what they currently, even if they've already maxed out on any of these any of the A through F listed here. Is that correct?
Allison, these would be for, like, this would be targeted towards people who are not on the current deed restriction, that those items do not apply to currently.
Excellent. That is very helpful. Thank you. The 10-year mark, I would love for that to be discussed a little further. With the 10% of capital improvements I could make to my home as it was sold, I can't bring it up to standard. Like every appliance is from 1996. The walls and the molding and the cracked windows, everything is still from the original. So I can't even get to standard in year 2 of owning this house with that 10% to say you have to wait the 8 years to just get it to where you wish it was when you bought it. That it feels like if it's going to be hard, or maybe case by case, but that 10-year kind of presumes that you got it pretty good to start with. And I think if the point is that we're trying to encourage people to make the updates that are going to keep these places safe and livable and better for the next owner, putting some of those projects off for 8 years or 5 years is against that. And then when you do, I think you just explained this, Cindy, so when you do re-up, that 10% is based on your new assessed value, not the 10% of your purchase price. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think that's great. And, we've talked a lot about getting people to update their deed restrictions. I want to clarify that this is just, you can update your deed restriction just to focus on that capital improvement updates, or would you be able to wiggle some new deed restrictions in there? Is there anything we want to get out of this by saying, yes, you can update your deed restriction to update those capital improvement amounts, but also we need you to have a certain amount in your HOA's capital reserves, blah, 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 things we've been trying to get people to update for years. I think this would be a good opportunity to ask what else we could update in these instances.
And the board just reviewed the deed restriction, and we just did a few changes to that deed restriction. Putting in an HOA requirement into a personal deed restriction, I don't think is fair to that specific owner. Again, that specific owner is one voice in that HOA. And there's a lot of times that specific person can't push everybody else into doing the right thing. I think and again, this is a lot longer discussion that we need to have with regards to capital reserves. And And there's got to be something else that we can really start to incentivize these HOAs into doing the right thing. But I don't think requiring an owner to do something, do you require an owner to then say, well, you have to put additional money into a capital reserve, but give it to us so we can keep it for you, so when you need it, then we have it? I don't want to go there, not right now. Again, that's, I think, a capital reserve discussion.
Yeah, that's a conversation.
I absolutely hear you.
Yeah.
I am a little scared of having one, one fancy apartment or one apartment that's kind of done the right thing in a place where the entire parking garage or the entire roof is about to crumble anyway. But I agree to not make one person who's trying to do the right thing become the champion or the adversary of their entire HOA.
Tom?
Just a quick comment, don't forget, capital improvements are not the same as repair and maintenance, okay? So, I'm not sure what the policy is, I'm not completely sure what the policy is on repairs and maintenance, but, if you add a room to your home, that's a capital improvement, right? If you had a swimming pool, that's a capital improvement. If you fix broken windows, that's not a capital improvement. So that's a distinction that I think you need to make sure. So when you talk about people, when you use terminology like update a home or whatever, it's not clear if you're talking about a capital improvement or repairs and maintenance. And it seems to me the policy for one is not necessarily indicative of what the policy for the other should be.
And that is one of the things that we either approve or do not approve. If we really feel that it's a repair or replacement, we will not approve it. And the person can either fix it or whatever, but if it's really and truly a maintenance item, we treat it as a maintenance item, not a capital improvement. If somebody, though, buys a more energy efficient hot water heater, we would allow them to, even though their old hot water heater broke down, we would allow them that credit. Windows, if they go into, because there's still a lot of people out there who have single pane windows, or there's so much better product out there now. If they really upgrade to a better product, we feel that it's a capital improvement, and we would allow that as well. But again, remember that all capital improvements still depreciate down over time.
So what Cindy's describing and what I described is consistent with basic accounting principles. It's not something that we just made up on our own.
Right.
And Rachel and then Skippy.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that I would still go back to the same point of this is where, even when we're seeing it with a board and Cindy thinks we know everything that we're talking about, and then we all actually have different impressions of the same terminology, that this should be presented when it is presented to the public or to any existing APCHA buyers with a printed list that says, these are the things that you would then be able to use this money on, and these are the things that these do not apply to, like replacing your broken refrigerator or things like that. But, we've got to have it spelled out black and white. Otherwise, people feel like they're led down a merry path, or they just didn't understand, and that needs to be there. But beyond all that, I really think that Allison has raised a new point and a new issue that is potentially not what this can solve. I want to see the mechanics spelled out for this, what people can use it for, so they can make their own financial decision if that's time to get rid of their old deed restriction and get a new one. But what Allison is talking about is, frankly, transactions that have happened recently before there were seller standards, and this potential that new homeowners are going to pay for repairs that they cannot even put into a depreciating capital issue. And I think that's an entirely different issue for us to tackle. I'd like to see us tackle it. Maybe there is some sort of allowance that we could create for these homeowners of a credit that is separate from the deed restriction. It's not requiring you to come in for a new deed restriction. It's not this or that, but could be. I think that there's some legitimacy to that for people who may have bought something who it failed a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, and I'll leave it at that. Last thing I want to say, I've mentioned before the bathroom repair next door to me at Hunter Creek, and I'm so curious to find out what it really cost. Well, as I found out, it was really caused by the plumbing hot water break in November around Thanksgiving under the whole building, and it blew up the entire stack of plumbing up to the 3rd floor, and all 3 bathrooms in the 3 units adjacent to me are having to be replaced at the HOA expense, and they're arguing with the insurance company as it blew out all their walls and plumbing and everything like that in this old building.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of capital reserve problems out there. Thank you.
Bluff. Excellent point. Skibby?
Yep, we've been moving through this over a long time, and I think I've got it all pieced together, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this clearly. So first, the reason that we want people to come under a new deed restriction is for 2 primary reasons. Either their existing deed restriction sunsets, or their old deed restriction does not have the enabling language for standards for sellers, and those would both be a benefit to us. The benefit to them if they choose to come under this is a few things. So they get that language that allows them to make capital improvements for those listed green or eco-conscious things that are not limited. They get a renewed 10% towards their capital improvement that lasts for, in this case, 10 years, and that is from the reset assessed value at the time they take on the new deed restriction. Is that all accurate?
Well, the depreciation could be different.
Yes.
For each item. I mean, there are some things that depreciate have a 5-year life or 7-year life,
Yes.
and then there's some that have a 15 or 20-year life.
Yeah, but the opportunity for them to sort of re-up that 10% is at 10 years, and if they paid $100,000 for their unit at a 3% simple 10 years ago, their new 10% would be on 130%. Okay, just want to make sure. And does this new deed restriction always mirror their previous appreciation?
No.
It doesn't. So what is it set at now?
What do you mean
Well, if they were one of these outliers that had a 6% or a 2%.
It's 3% or CPI, which it's the most recent deed restriction. It's in
Okay.
perpetuity. It always relates to the regulations.
Okay.
And
So no matter what their previous
yes.
one is, they move to 3% or CPI,
Exactly.
they get the new assessed. Got it.
And they're
Okay.
at 3% now, everybody, right?
3% or the deed restriction at 3% or CPI, whichever is less in perpetuity, has probably been around since the 1995, 1996, something like that.
Sorry, Skippy.
Okay, no, totally fine. So just now I'm clear, that's great. Totally support it, I think it's the right thing to do. I think it starts to really, weave the web of a consistent system with the accountability and upkeep, which is really great. 2 things we talked about just for the board. The HOA thing is certainly an issue, and I want to tackle it, but they're interrelated, there's no question, but let's get this one done, make progress, and then I think when we have the opportunity to get there after a few other barriers we didn't set up are there, we can revisit this, and I think we should, and I would definitely support that. And then as to the 10-year, Allison, I think you make a great point. I feel like I don't know enough about that, how many units are in that condition, how many are not. What feels clear to me is in the situation where there's the most need, so Allison, if we'll just make you the poster child of that, in the best case scenario, you're not going to bring your unit up from 96 to 2021 standards in the next 2 years, and if you are, then maybe we question which category you got to buy. So my hope is that we can put this 10 years in as a placeholder, knowing that people aren't going to need that immediately, but find a way to check in with people who are taking advantage of the new 10%. So in a year or so, we can have a bit more information on what that need is, and then we can kind of decide if there's a need to change that.
Yeah, and I think you could even look at because the issue with a lot of the older units is that a lot of them haven't turned over. I mean, as we've talked about, if one turns over 10 times in 30 years and one turns over once in 30 years, the one that turned over 10 times is going to be far more valuable than the one that turned over one.
Yeah.
And so, maybe we look at some sort of adjuster to say that if you've got one that's 30 years old and turned over once, then you're allowed more.
Mm-hmm.
Because just to make it equal with the one that turned over 10 times that had 10% from every owner.
Understood.
So maybe that's something we look at down the road.
Understood.
Skippy, I have one question for your last thing about the 10 years and a unit like Allison's. Are you saying that you would start this year, but you wouldn't finish your improvements for 5 years? So you're asking where does the 10 years start?
I'm saying that I'm comfortable with the 10-year horizon for now, not because I don't think there may be a need to do it less frequently in instances like Carson is referencing, but that even the person who has that need is not going to be able to do all that upgrade in the next 2 years anyways, and so it gives us the window to get some real feedback and data instead of anecdotally guessing, and then we can make that change at that time from a more informed place.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
He's saying that if you go under new deed restriction now, you would not be able to go under new deed restriction for at least 10 years.
So, but if you staggered your improvements, because that's all you could afford to do, would you then wait until you were through for those 5 years and then start your next 10 years?
Well, if somebody still has capital improvements to work with, then to me, you work within that parameter, those capital improvements that you still have to work with. But I agree with Allison, there are some people, when they take over a unit, there ends up being a lot more that has to be done, especially with the older units. Because one of the things that you see in inspection reports is you see where you need to update it to today's electrical things. And we don't require sellers to do that because it wasn't compliant at the time that they bought it. So it might be that now the new person really wants to bring all the electrical issues up to today's standard, but they can only do it piecemeal, and it's something that because they can't afford the whole 10%. You also have units out there that do just have a flat 10%. I'm in one of those units. It was a 10% for the life of the unit, and there's also some units like up at Highlands. They were $40,000. Somebody has $4,000 worth of capital improvements that they can work with. That's it. Wow. And that doesn't get you anything, really. So there's a lot of different things out there that we could look at. I mean, I could give you so many different scenarios. And do we pick and choose? What this was trying to do is trying to get some type of a criteria in there to give somebody, I can do a little bit more now type thing. But we get an updated deed restriction on it.
Right.
And it has the language that Tom has put in. It has the language that we really feel comfortable with at this point in time. And because we do have so many deed restrictions out there, it's unreal. And this is hoping that some of those people who are really under those older ones, maybe it will push them, that little incentive, to go under a brand new one like this.
So I have a quick question just in the context of keeping units affordable. So if let's say somebody did sign a new deed restriction and came under the new deed restriction, and then the energy efficiency improvements, right, are not included in the 10% capital improvement cap. So if somebody had a $400,000 unit and they came in and said, we're going to put $100,000 worth of energy efficiency into this unit. So they're taking it's a increase from $400,000 to $500,000. What would prevent that, or would we allow that? I mean, how would we?
That is something that, because we've had people come forward with wanting to do solar panels and solar, and that, which is some of them are fairly reasonable and some are just,
right.
We said, too high.
Right.
We can't go that high. So there is a limit that we look at when somebody wants to do something.
And that's based on the
category.
The category.
We also know that there are units that are already outside of the maximum that's stated in the guidelines. The maximum that's stated in the guidelines right now is really based on a brand new unit that comes on the market. That's what you can sell it for. Because the day they close, it's already over that price because they're starting to gain appreciation. So that gives us at least someplace to work with when we're working with people with these capital improvements.
Okay.
But I do know, and Rachel raised a good concern about some of these units getting way outside the category.
Right.
I don't think we're there yet with most of them. That is something, and I wasn't even going to bring this up, but that is something that I feel that we have to work on. Staff will be working on that over the next few months and bring it back to the board, along with some type of an affordability standard.
Okay.
But we want to bring back to say, this is how many units are basically outside of category 5 or outside of category 4 or whatever, about how much. So
Right.
then we can really have that conversation then. But I want to bring that back when we have a lot more information about it as well.
Yep.
I would like to say something about her last comment.
Okay.
So I was a little concerned to hear you say that you wouldn't approve somebody's solar panels because it would make the value of the unit too high. I would love us to explore some way to avoid turning down somebody wanting to put solar panels on their house, whether it's through a subsidy or through giving them a little bit of lenience when it comes to the percent of capital improvements they can do or something, because we don't want to be discouraging people from converting their unit to more energy resource systems just because it's going to make their value too high, unless I misunderstood.
And actually, we haven't really seen too much of that. There's a lot of different products out there. There's some products that are champagne products, and there are other products that
For
are
the
not
same
so
thing.
high, that are more reasonably priced. And what we would like to see is more of, isn't there something else? Bring us back something else that might also help you, that might be a little bit more reasonable than that. It's been a while since we've seen that. Because you're right, we don't want to stop somebody from trying to do solar type panels.
Yep.
But and they've done a lot. There's a lot more different products and everything that are out there right now as well.
Real quick, John and Rachel have had their hand up for quite a bit here, but Tom, I'm going to let Tom jump in real quick, and then we'll go to John and Rachel.
Just to respond to Francie's comment. Francie, to put it bluntly, that's exactly what we do. We don't let people make improvements that will render the unit unaffordable. And built into the system is an understanding that we need to balance the quality of the housing and the improvements to the housing with the affordability standard. You can do it any way you want to do it in terms of the capital improvements, but the reason for putting a cap on the appreciation is because we're trying to keep the units affordable. And imagine if everybody this is just a thought exercise, but imagine if everybody decided to put $150,000 or $200,000 of energy efficiency improvements on all the houses in the system. It would be a nightmare in terms of affordability. So that's a balancing that has to occur, and that's why the deed restrictions and the regulations put a cap of 10%, I think it is, on the amount you can spend on capital improvements and get a reimbursement. It's not a perfect system because we do want energy efficiency and those sorts of things. But it's not a perfect world, and this is the balancing act that we have to try to work with.
Yep.
Thank you, Tom.
John.
This is probably a nitpicky thing, but Cindy brought up something with electrical. Electrical, is that really a depreciating asset? And why would, to me, that's a safety and soundness thing too. So if your electrical's out of code, or there's a reason you have to update electrical and bring it up to code when you do a remodel, or even in the core, work, tenant improvements on a space, it's to bring it up to safety standards at some point. So a lot of those things, why would we say no, or why would we not allow somebody to do that, just period? That should be one of those outliers that is just an exception.
John, we would, especially if it's a safety issue. And bringing something up to code, we would allow somebody to get capital improvements for that. It's
Okay,
usually,
thank you.
it's usually the new owner that does that. We don't require the seller to do it because at the time they bought the home, it was up to
Right.
standards. And until you do a major remodel, you don't have to bring it up to today's standards. And that owner at the time probably never did a major remodel. So
Oh,
what
that's what
they
I'm saying.
had
So
there
you're
was done.
referring to that major remodel, but the electrical, I mean, those expenses, to me, that's not a depreciable asset at some point. It's a true improvement to that property.
Exactly. And it's usually outside the 10% cap.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Rachel,
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, I can't plug in an air fryer and a electric heater in my bedroom without blowing a first circuit in my place. The wiring's so old. We just, it's not that it's a hazard, but it can't handle modern equipment. And
You do a lot of frying in your bedroom, do you?
What I'm saying is that they're in totally different parts of the 740
Yeah, that's a whole
square
different
foot
picture.
house, but you can't have two different appliances plugged in at once. Frankly, I can't cook and have a heater at the same time in this house. But secondly, I just want to say really quickly, I was at the conference 2 weeks ago, spoke with the A.P.C.H.A people and one of the major agents out here, Chantel, and she actually said that within their office, they're starting to talk about, well, where did the 30% affordability standard for homeowners come from? And is it even realistic? And how many people can't, you know, buy food and 30% and insurance, and let alone save for retirement? And that they said, that, you know, really, we think that standard came from bankers and mortgage brokers and not having anything to do with real life or what people could afford and still save for their kids' college. So I don't know if they're rethinking that or that will ever change. But what I was really going to say is when we talk about, oh, these unit prices are exceeding category, I don't know that that is the worry, because it's more about interest rates. And, you know, if you go from a 3% interest rate that everyone can get with relatively good credit to a future interest rate of 6%, that's a 100% increase in cost of interest. It's not these little minor increments that people tend to think the difference between 2% and 3% is not much. It's 50% higher cost. And so the people can afford these extremely high cost units we have now because they're getting 2 and 2.5% loans. And when the interest rates change, and I had my license when it was 11 and 12 and 15%, it can go there again. And that's when you're going to have a lot of people either going into bankruptcy, units sitting on the thing, and no one able to buy them because they're $600,000 units now. So affordability is it's not just what the price of the unit's going to be, it's what is the cost of borrowing money 5 years from now to buy that unit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
that's a great point. I mean, the last time inflation was this high, the average 30-year mortgage was 13.6%.
Oh, my God.
So,
Yeah, that's what really will affect people's ability to buy or sell.
yeah.
And we've always been afraid of the nuclear meltdown when you have 10 bankruptcies at once and not enough money to buy them and keep them in the system. And the mortgages will get released by Fannie Mac and they will go free market.
Okay, well, any other comments on this, Skippy?
I had a question on the tail end of that rosy comment. Francis' question raised a question for me, which is CORE has grants for various improvements. So I'm making up a scenario. I don't know if they do a grant, but say there's a $100,000 solar project and CORE offers a $60,000 grant. The capital appreciation, is that for 100K or 40K?
That's a really good question. We haven't, because there's a lot of people who do energy efficient stuff and they get a rebate from CORE. They provide us with a receipt of what the cost was. We probably know that they've also gotten a rebate from CORE with regards to that. Usually they're smaller items. They haven't been anything big like that. And maybe down the line, it's gonna be like, if you get a rebate, you get it from what your costs were, not what
Not
they
the
gave
value.
you a rebate or they gave you a grant for.
At first glance,
Yeah,
that would be
yeah.
sensible, especially as we're like opening the door to many more green
Yes,
improvements.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
just something to draw attention to.
Agreed. John, did you have a question, or is that an old hand?
Sorry, I keep
I don't mean your hand is old. I
Middle
mean,
age, yeah. Resoundingly.
any other comments on this
Worst.
on this topic?
I'm in that category now too.
I just would like a summary of where.
That's what I would like, is
But there is
do
a
you
result
want
of
me to
this
bring this
conversation.
back one more time
So
with some of the stuff that you brought up?
let me ask the question in the negative. I mean, is there anybody who is? I mean, I think everything that we've heard is about making this policy more lenient in the future at some point as part of future discussions. Is there anybody who's not okay with this policy right now of allowing people, anybody who wants to sign a new deed restriction, has owned the property for 10 years, and is in good standing with their HOA? Is there anybody who's not okay with that piece of it?
I'm good to go.
No. Okay. So, I mean, I think, just for the recap, I mean, we heard Allison talking about, and Rachel about what do we do with the properties that are older, that have needs for more capital improvements, but maybe have, right? So I think that's something we need to put on our list of things to tackle in the future. But for now, I think we should move forward with this policy as written and encourage as many people as we can that are on old deed restrictions to come onto new ones.
Yeah. Carson, I'm in total agreement with what you have stated. I see no reason to hold back, but I do think there really needs to be some written clarification so that nobody is confused later that I thought I signed this thing so I could use the money for this and now I find out I can't, or anything like that. And just given the number of questions and clarifications the board, were asking, I think it needs to be really detailed out and not in legalese, and let people know to make that understanding. But otherwise, absolutely right, it just needs to be really cleaned up to be presented.
And I think that will fall, right? That's not necessarily, I don't think, something that we can put together as a one-size-fits-all, because all of the deed restrictions are different. So that'll be up to Cindy.
We will readdress because the deed restriction itself has that information in it. We will make sure that it's very clear before we move forward with that. That if it's a repair or a maintenance item, it's not going to be not going to be counted. If it's this, we will just make sure that section of the deed restriction is very clear, so that no matter what, somebody's going to say, well, I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
So we are going to still get some of that, people, but we will make it as clear as we possibly can.
And I think just like a one-page infographic that can go out that people can see, that it's easy to follow, and hopefully Megan and Carolyn can write a story about this new incentive program and how it ties together with all of our housing goals.
Yeah.
Wink.
Yeah.
I'm not even listening.
And especially how that new reset price will be determined, because the unit has to pass basic livability standards to even get that.
Right.
So it's not just what the new deed restriction will allow you to do, it's what you need to do and how that price will be evaluated that you're going to get at that time.
Okay.
Kelly.
Yeah, the rebate question troubles me a little bit, just because that's sort of double dipping on community resources. So I don't know if there is a simple way to just say less any rebate you may have received on these improvements or something like
I
that.
would agree with that.
Yeah, I
Unless someone
agree.
has a clarification I don't understand.
Yeah, Rachel gives a thumbs up. Yeah, I mean, I think that's very common sense. We should definitely do that.
We'll work on the energy
Yeah.
efficient stuff.
Great.
Okay. All right, so our next agenda item, we've got 6 minutes to cover
Do you
the
really
history
wanna get into
on
this now?
right sizing. I think we'll table that one.
Thank you.
15?
So, yeah, do we need a motion to table that, or we just table it?
You can just table it. I'll make sure it's back. We bring this back at the next.
Diane?
No, that was a clap. It was a good, it was supporting you.
Can I ask a question on scheduling?
Sure.
So back when we were doing 5 to 7 meetings, and then we bumped it up an hour because we thought we wanted extra time.
Yeah.
So are we now just doing 4 to 6? Are we not doing 4 to 7? What's the plan?
We agree to do 4 to 6:30.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
trying to keep it so that everybody's not getting home
Got it.
super late. so-
Remember we had that meeting where we were all so tired and we said after
Oh, I-
6:30 we were done?
I'm all for more shorter meetings, but just so I understand how to schedule stuff, I just want to understand what we're doing.
You can stay till 7.
Thank you. Cindy, let's stay and solve some problems.
All right, let's go to Board of Directors comments, and we will start with Rachel.
I don't think I really have anything other than what we have discussed so far. I would just say I think the council is viewing how we move forward with the housing through the Aspen area community plan lens, that is what the program is for as a community. I do think there really are concerns about people's expectations of APCHA being able to replicate the workforce that we are losing throughout the free market, the naturally occurring housing of the Roaring Fork Valley, and not really understanding that well over 50% of our workforce has come from outside of Pitkin County for quite a while now. Those growth pressures, those STRs, those 540,000 units in Glenwood Springs, that's where our workforce is disappearing from in a big way. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Allison.
I really appreciate Andrew and Matthew, your presentations today. I love the data. I like being kept up to date as to what APCHA staff is doing. I think the community really doesn't separate APCHA staff and APCHA board. So things like, like this, you mentioned the 16 Ajax Avenue. That's something that we were not at that meeting, and I found out about that meeting when the public did, as you said it during comments today. So I think just making sure that communication piece includes a lot of that FYI info, and I think you're on a good path for that. I wonder if the new updating deed restrictions could be a Facebook Live Q&A. How fun would that be?
Wow.
And Cindy, I really appreciate, I know we're cutting it short today, but that you're going to give us the history on something as big as a topic as right sizing. I think context and what's been tried, what's been said, not trying to start these things from scratch is so helpful. So I think that was a wise agenda item that I look forward to at the next meeting. And I think those are all my comments. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Allison. John.
I was going to comment that this young whippersnapper, Allison, wowed us with a Facebook Live question and answer session or whatever it was that she said. But so interesting to see what we come up with. But I have no comments. I do think, or no real comments, but I do think, one of the phone calls I got when I mentioned it, we've got some really interesting minds, smart people in our community, highly energetic people that would love to help work on the housing issues that we're facing and that they're doing. And I think this, maybe it was a moratorium that was put in place by City Council and on short-term rentals and whatever else. Maybe that invigorated that community to come to the table and help solve problems. So that's exciting. I mean, I told you Bob Bowden called me on the phone while he was kind of watching this in his office or something. But yeah, so anyway, and I'm hopeful that this mass mandates, the virtue signaling ends, and we move on from that next week. So thanks. Bye.
Kelly.
Will you come in then, John?
I don't have any.
Absolutely. I hate doing meetings with a mask up.
I've just realized, is your black screen a protest of some kind? All right, the protest is over. He's off his knee. All right, let's go.
Oh, there he is.
I don't have any comments.
No
today.
comments from Kelly, Francie?
No, I don't either, thank you. I did want to thank Matthew, though, for that, the little timeline of communication, because it's so huge.
And Skippy?
Just quick ones. As mentioned, the housing strategic plan will be coming to all of you guys. I and Rachel would very much value your input. I think it's a very ambitious but achievable plan that is really integrated into all the things we face here. And so it would be really great to get your guys' input before that meeting. And also, as you talk to people, for you to sort of just have scope of what we're looking at and what we'll be working on over the next bit. Second thing, John Ward, moratorium, STRs, housing development. Yesterday, we moved forward a really aggressive public engagement piece to this moratorium, and really want to hear all voices. This is the time for sort of creative friction to come away with the best policy. So I would just ask each of you, if you're talking to anyone on the street, on the phone, get them off, listen to them as much as you want, but feel free to just push them off on me or Rachel. I would love to, text, email, whatever is easiest for you, send them over here, and I'll make sure that A, I'm available to listen, or more importantly, they get plugged into the right part of the process during this, because I really want to include them. So just
When's the meeting?
well, our meeting on the housing plan is either Monday or Tuesday. We haven't gotten the packet yet, so I don't know which one it is. But you'll get it before, it sounds like. So shoot them all our way.
Diane?
It's on Tuesday agenda. Even though it's a regular meeting, it'll be a work session item on Tuesday's meeting. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
2 for 1.
Just echo Allison's comments to staff, very helpful. Look forward to seeing more data as we move forward. Just looking at the trade downs, as I've mentioned to several of you, I mean, some of this goes back 18, 20 years. So I'm looking forward to tackling this, and so that in 2042 they're not looking back and reading our minutes and wondering why we didn't do anything. So I'm looking forward to tackling that.
Of course, I forgot one thing.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to that too. And since we're not doing it for another 2 weeks, Cindy, I don't know if it would be possible, but if we could reach out and just get 1 or 2 members of that the Frontiers group, whether it's Adam or Pam or just someone to be here.
Pete Loris, I mean.
Yeah, Pete is great. Just like if there could be one person here who's actually sat in those meetings, I would find that really beneficial.
Okay. With that, would accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I move to adjourn.
Got a motion from Allison and a second from Kelly, and it's a roll call vote.
Allison?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Carson?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great conversation.
Good work, guys.
Good night.